Coming up next on AVID Achievers, we will have a conversation about the college application process. Hello and welcome to AVID Achievers. I am your host, Dot Arida, coordinator of AVID. Today I am joined by two of our site coordinators, Ms. Kellie Goforth from North County High School and Mr. Brad Bittinger from Southern High School. We're going to have a conversation today about the college application process. Thank you, Brad and Kellie, for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so we're already active in another school year. Our seniors are very busy with getting the senior year into swing. What were some actions that you advised your students to take over the summer to be prepared for the college application process when they got back?
I always tell the kids, number one thing between junior year and senior year is to go visit colleges, because we're going to be starting off in October with applications, and it happens right away. So we have a lot to do. Plus there's sports in school and homecomings and everything else. So the time to really visit the schools is summertime, because they don't want to apply to a place they've never been to, and they don't get that feel for, is this right for me or not?
Yeah, it's so important to think about what it's like to live on that campus, especially if a student is living there, or even if they're commuting, trying out that travel from home and to the campus, and really getting a feel for what it would be like to live there is so important. We also ask that our students make a list of their top 8 schools that they're really interested in applying to during that junior year. Working on the college essays is a really good tip, that they can come in ready with that foundational college essay before senior year starts.
Yeah, on top of that, anything that they can do to build their resume, they're really at the end. So we know what colleges see on resumes and transcripts are 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. By the time they start applying, they're only at the beginning of their senior year. So any summer jobs or volunteer opportunities or things like that they can do over the summer is really beneficial.
Great. So if students did not complete these actions over the summer, is it too late? Like, are they already way behind?
Yeah, it's definitely not too late at all. You can do these things during your senior year too. So just making sure that you're budgeting your time for your classes, your college applications, and finding that time to balance everything can be a challenge, but it can definitely be done.
Yeah, sacrificing a weekend to see a school in person is definitely worth it. It makes it harder in September and October, but it's still doable for sure.
And it's also really fun for the kids to experience going to a college campus with maybe a family member or a friend, or visiting another former student that is living at that campus, and just getting that experience during their senior year can be really fun and exciting.
So if the students didn't complete these actions this summer, is it too late? Are they way behind?
No, not at all. There's definitely time during their senior year that they can get these things in. Do a college visit over the weekend, be careful about your time management, make sure that, you have time to get your homework done and those college essays done. It's definitely doable to do it during the senior year.
It can be more beneficial to see the college campus in action, whereas over the summertime, obviously, there's no students and no professors for the most part. So seeing it busy, eating in the cafeteria, doing all the things that are like what real students are doing at the real time is definitely beneficial.
Yeah, going to a campus when you know it's about to be class change can be really exciting too, to see all of those college students come out of their classes and then go on to the next ones. It's a different experience.
So when you have your students choose which colleges to visit, where do they even start?
So we have our students make a list of their top 8 schools that they're interested in attending, and then maybe choosing from schools that they know that they're going to apply to. Maybe doing some visits that are kind of close to home, like North County is very close to Towson and Morgan, and those are really easy for our students to visit. So just choosing schools that you know that you're going to apply to, schools that have your major, and schools that are in your interests.
Yeah, for our kids, for AVID, a lot of them have been researching these schools for 3 or 4 years. So we're really narrowing it down with, do they have my major? Can I afford this school? Can I afford to get there and get home on the weekends if I wanted to? So they've done their research, and if you're going to apply, you definitely want to know what the school has what you want.
Great. So what do your AVID seniors do the first few weeks of school?
So our first job is to update the resume with anything that they've done since the last time we looked at the resume. So We usually do the resumes in like mid-junior year, so any new jobs they've had or community service or new reference, or if their GPA changed, add anything like that to the resume. And we use that to request our letters of recommendation from our teachers. We want our kids to be the first, and we want them to do it professionally. So we have their resume printed out, a copy of their transcript, and a brag sheet that they've made, and they see their teachers in person, and they ask and shake a hand and say thank you and smile and do the whole thing, because we want our kids to stand out. We want them to get their recommendations that they need.
And then after they ask the teacher in person, thank you for writing my letter, we ask that they send that follow-up email so that it still has all that information, and then the teacher gets that in their inbox, or the coach or the community member that has been involved with that student's growth through high school.
Yeah, we're usually looking for the letters to be done by mid-October. And after that point, everything gets loaded up to Naviance, and then our kids are going to write handwritten thank you notes to those teachers to say thanks.
Another big thing that they do in those first couple weeks is revisit that list that they made their junior year of the colleges that they're interested in. Are these still the top 8 schools that they're interested in? We probably want to narrow it down a little bit more to maybe 5 schools that they might actually apply to, depending on what the rest of the year looks like and how many free college applications they can get too.
Great. So tell me about the different ways students can apply for college.
So they can apply through a lot of different websites. There's the Common Application website, which will send one application out to multiple schools. There's also Common Black App, which partners with HBCUs. And then there's Coalition, again, which is would you call that mass college application website?
What do you mean by mass?
Like, so you only fill it out one time, and then you can check multiple colleges and
it's their
send it
own.
out.
It's like a less popular Common App, I guess. There's not as many schools as Common App, so it's difficult for kids because they have to weigh their options. Do I want to use Common App, or should I go through the school? What's my best bet? Because they can spend a lot of time filling out applications, and the Common App is not a short application by any means. When they get it done, if they have 5 or 6 schools that are Common App schools, they can apply in 10 minutes. But if they don't, then they're spending a lot of time filling out applications on different websites and different avenues. It's tricky, for sure.
And you have to think about the costs too, because during Maryland college application campaigns, some colleges waive the fee of the application, and so, but you have to apply directly through the school's website rather than Common App. And so what students really need to be ready to do is make a list of the deadlines, make a list of the application fees, and understand how much it's going to cost to apply to some schools. And will those schools be offering a fee waiver? Can they have access to a fee waiver? Or maybe you want to do the Common Black App route where you pay $35 and your application is sent to a lot of HBCUs. I think about 45 HBCUs see that one application.
So for the Common App or some of the larger like mass application processes, do you think it's more beneficial to apply directly to the school, or do you think applying on the Common App is equally beneficial?
I think for the most part the Common App is beneficial. There are some schools that I think it's better because you get a direct conversation with the school, but that's from like years of experience of knowing which schools and having a connection with the admissions counselors through AVID and things like that. But Common App is effective in itself. I think it's a good platform.
And it's great for kids too because they only have to fill out their personal information one time and then they can submit it to colleges that way. So instead of logging into a different application, remembering a password to 5 different colleges and finding retyping everything in every time, the Common App is really easy and manageable.
Great. And you talked about during the application week that some colleges waive their fee. How would students who are not in AVID find out about which schools are participating in that?
I guess a search of Maryland College Application or Maryland College Access Campaign or guidance. We use our guidance counselors very heavily in the application process.
Yeah, our guidance counseling office does compile a list of all of those schools that are offering free applications, and maybe it's Salisbury one week and Morgan another week. So just doing your research, reaching out to an AVID teacher if you have access to one at your school, and definitely following through with your school counseling.
Sometimes an email to an admissions counselor pays dividends. I mean, you could email a counselor specifically, even if it's not a special week, even if it's not the Maryland College application campaign, and just ask. Sometimes that, I really am interested in your school. I don't have $50 to apply to your school. Is there anything that I could do? Sometimes they give a code. Sometimes they just give a free application, a fee waiver. So it happens for sure.
Okay. So tell me about early action or early acceptance. What does that mean for kids?
So early action is a application they can fill out before regular decision. It's not binding, which means if the kid gets into the school, they don't have to go, whereas early decision, it's the same kind of process, but if they get into that school, then all of their other applications technically are voided, I guess. It's basically a contract between you and the school, and usually to get out of that contract, you have to pay money. So if you go early decision, even if it's an accident, even if you don't mean to do early decision, if you get accepted to that school and you decide not to go to that school, it's a few $100s just to negate that contract and not go to that school.
So why would a student choose to go early decision?
So we prefer early action. I can't think of an instance where I would recommend an AVID student to choose early decision, because really what it comes down to is the financial aspect as well. And what's that gap price going to be in February? And early decision requires our students to commit to those schools in November without really getting any financial information from the college or their FAFSA back yet. So I cannot think of a reason that I would tell a student to do early decision, but early action is really cool because they get all of those acceptances around December, and they can start thinking about, oh, well, now I have the winter where I can go out and visit campuses because I know I've been accepted to these 3 schools, and now this is my new choice.
I'm not sure in many instances when early decision is appropriate. I mean, even if a kid has unlimited funds to go to any school they want to, I still don't see why early decision would be the best bet. I can't imagine it gives them that much of an advantage to apply early decision, unless they are dead set and they absolutely know. But there's no 17-year-old that I've ever met that's 100% sure of where they're going to go in September of their senior year. So it's definitely advisable to do early action versus early decision.
Okay, great. Let's talk a little bit about the college essay. So I think that's the one piece of the application that maybe strikes fear in the heart of our students, right? That's the piece that they're very worried about. So what tips or tricks do you give for students to really write a memorable piece?
We just want to know a story. What can you tell colleges, something that makes you you, and shows your passions and your interests, and maybe like why you might be a great fit for college. And just telling a story about anything that's happened, whether it's, one that always stands out to me from one of my class of 2016 seniors is a student told the story about building a birdhouse, and just like how she went to Home Depot and collected these materials, but the moral of the story was that she wasn't going to give up on that final product, but it was just the story of building a birdhouse, and it was really cool, and it stands out.
Yeah, I mean, anytime kids are showing growth over time, persevering through challenges, things like that, and we've all been through so many challenges in the past few years, so everybody has a story to tell. It's just a matter of getting our kids to tell it effectively and concisely in 650 words, which is really not a lot. It sounds like a lot, but it's 4 to 5 paragraphs. So they're introducing it, they're getting into the story, and they're getting out quickly and making it effective and passionate. Something about them that really stands out. It's tough.
And so what we like to do is we like to ask our students to give us as much as possible, because it's easier to help narrow down a story. But if you're starting with nothing, it's hard to drag that story out. So the more you can write at the very beginning, maybe during your junior year, then the easier it is to kind of pull back.
Yeah, this is really where we start the process of resume building in 9th grade for this reason. I mean, not only for this reason, obviously it builds character and builds better people, but if they're really going out and experiencing things that most kids aren't, serving their communities and doing things that are just unique, the story writes itself. A lot of kids play sports, a lot of kids have really good grades, a lot of kids do a lot of things, but not a lot of kids do the things that are above and beyond, that really tell a story in a college essay, and it really helps it to write itself in those instances.
So I recently heard on a webinar that when you're thinking about your college essay, that you should think about what is something that didn't shine through in your application. So what did you not tell this college about you that they really need to now uncover, because your story is incomplete without it.
Sure.
So that kind of really stuck out to me. Like, they don't want to hear about, sticking with your sport for 4 years because they saw that in your resume. So I think that's, a piece to think about. Like, what didn't I tell them about me that makes me different from the other people that are applying?
Sure. Or it's sometimes it's a chance for a student to explain why something is not on their resume, something that you wouldn't share with somebody necessarily. I had one example, and this is a extreme example, but a girl who got to senior year and she had never played a sport with the school. She had never joined a club. She had never done anything. But her story was that she went home every day and took care of a sick parent. That's not on a resume. That's not on a transcript. There's no club or sport for that. But that's her story, right? That's who she is, and it turned out to be a phenomenal essay, and it was very different, obviously. So it's not always the kids of, I've played a sport for 4 years and this is why I am awesome, right? It's kids who have a story that they don't always share. It's a really good opportunity for them to do so.
That's really good advice. I did recently also hear that putting things that you do in your household in your application is also acceptable. So in that activities section, if you are the student that goes home every afternoon and takes care of a 3-year-old brother so that your mom can go to work at that time, that can also go into your application, because it is a part of how you spend your time, and that, of course, is developing you as a person as well.
And some college applications have shorter response sections too. And what we like to advise our students is that everything that they write for colleges, they should be writing on a Google Doc first, so that they have that information already written, because household responsibilities might show up on a different application and be worded a little bit different, like how do you spend your free time? And on application 1, it's listed as household responsibilities. But you can go back to that Google Doc and grab that information that you've already prepared for a different school and say, here's how I spend my time at home.
Also scholarships. The essay prompts for applications for getting into school are almost identical to the scholarship applications as well. So if you have a really strong essay and a Google Doc with all your information ready to pull from, it's going to work for scholarships too, and it's just free money.
That's a great recommendation. I also saw on this year's Common App, there's a place at the end where you can talk about maybe any flaws in your resume or flaws in your transcript based on events that have happened. So obviously for everybody in the world, we had a COVID interruption that may have negatively impacted some students' education. But there's also, things that happen, like in California, there are forest fires that displaced some kids from school for some time. So have you had any experience coaching students through that? Like, have you seen students whose maybe transcript wasn't as perfect as they would have liked it to be? And how do you help them?
Always, yeah. A popular, no, I don't want to say popular, that's a bad word, but a common one is divorce. Like kids, parents go through divorce in high school, and it seems common enough that kids handle it all the time, but they don't really handle it all the time. They handle it very differently. So that's a common topic that kids want to share because it affects them greatly. It affects every part of their family. And sometimes their roles change. Sometimes their jobs change at home. Their responsibilities change at home when it goes from a 2-parent household to a 1-parent household. And academics can suffer, right? So it's definitely a part of a story to tell. It's just one example, but yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great point for the smaller essays. Do you have anything additional to share, instead of choosing to make your whole college essay about that one piece, which can sometimes lean to be the story of your parents and not necessarily the story of you, but choosing to use that in the smaller segmented essays is a really good tip.
Absolutely.
So you would definitely recommend sharing something in that, do you have something else to share space? So giving them again, just if there's something that didn't come out in the essay, make sure it's coming out there.
And just like colleges with optional essays, every chance is an opportunity to tell your story. And are we going to take all of those opportunities so that we get the best chance of being accepted? Or are we just going to submit our transcript and our SAT scores?
Right. I mean, these admissions counselors are seeing thousands. So at some point, it boils down to the last, let's say, 100 who have the exact same SAT scores and GPAs, play the same sports, right? So it comes down to, 5 or so kids. What sets you apart from that group of kids? And those stories can help tell that, tell them why you are different, exceptional, outstanding.
Ready for college.
Ready for college, exactly.
So we talked about options. A lot of schools are going test score optional. When do you recommend your students send scores, and when do you recommend they don't?
So I still recommend taking the SAT because being able to submit scores can also take automatic amounts of money off of tuition, and really looking at the school website to see what is the average SAT score at that school, and if the student is hitting the average or above, then definitely submit the scores. A lot of the Maryland private schools, if you have a certain GPA and a certain SAT score, it's an automatic percentage off of tuition. So looking at where you fall in that range and then submitting, but you have to do your research, and every school is different.
Yeah, I'm really nothing to add to that. I mean, it's definitely take it for the experience and to know where you are, what you need to work on, PSAT, SAT, all of those things. But if it comes down to it and you're below average on the score for the range of the school, sometimes it's not the best idea, right? So if you're in that range or above, then you can get more opportunities for acceptance and scholarships for sure.
So I know when you take the SAT, one of the things that you can do right at test time, before you even open that first question, is you can say, send my scores to these schools. So that's a definite no-no.
So in some cases that is free, and then sometimes you'll have to pay $11 to send your scores after the fact. So really just doing your research, maybe not the first time you take it, but if you felt comfortable the first time, maybe doing it the second time. But again, it's really dependent on the student and how well they approach tests, and I don't think there's a one answer fits all for that.
Yeah, and sometimes we lean more heavily to the safety schools to do that. And your kids, and they've usually taken the PSAT and they have an idea. Usually their scores aren't going to vary widely between different versions of the SAT, right? So they might improve a little bit here and there, but they're not going to improve by 500 points for the most part, right? So they know where they are, and usually a safety school is a school that they've chosen, that they know that they're either average or above average with SAT and GPA. And it can be a good way to save money, if they want to send those scores and they know about where they are with their scores. It's not always a bad idea.
That's a good tip.
Okay, great. So what does the overall timeline look like for application and acceptance?
So we usually try to start applying to schools by October 1st, get everything going by then. In the meantime, our letters of recommendation are being written by our teachers and then uploaded to Naviance. My goal for my kids and what I tell my parents is that I would love for you to have at least one acceptance letter as a holiday gift, right? Wrap it up and put it in your stocking like by December 25th or so. That's usually what we have for a lot of kids if they get their applications in by that mid to late October deadline.
Yeah, the first deadline, I think some Maryland schools have an October 15th early action deadline, and then generally November 1st and then November 15th are the big early action deadlines, and making that list. And then regular decision is around January 15th, 1st and 15th.
And how long do they usually have after those letters roll in? Like, is there a deadline for acceptance? Like, when do they make that final decision?
It depends on the school. I think University of Maryland came out really late last year, and I think it just depends on the school and the number of applicants that they get. But if you make it within that November 1st, 15th deadline, you're going to have your decision in December for most schools.
And then I think students have usually until May 1st to May 15th-ish to make a decision on their schools. So if they, let's say they receive an acceptance letter by January 1, they have about 5 months to talk it over with their parents, get their FAFSA, get everything in order, and still compare schools of where they got into and make that final decision.
Yeah, so in February, a lot of the financial aid packages come out from the schools, and that's where they take the information from the FAFSA and then any scholarships that the student had gotten from the school specifically, so a school-specific scholarship based on grades or academics, or maybe they submitted an additional supplemental piece, and then they can average out their FAFSA and their school-specific scholarships to find out what that final cost is around February, March, so that they are ready for that May deadline, and they can be really knowledgeable.
Great. So once the student is accepted and they've kind of made their decision, what are some ways they can prepare to get ready for that fall arrival?
There's a lot going on behind the scenes with the kids that we don't even see, but they're meeting roommates, they're picking dorms, they're shopping for everything that they need. We're teaching them in the meantime at school heavy scholarships. We are talking about financial literacy, what debt is, how loans work, which is something that we think that every kid should graduate with from high school. But our kids are given that education. Teaching them how to buy books, how to shop on a budget, how to eat on a budget, healthy on a budget. We're trying to do all those things with them in those final months of high school and to prepare them.
Before we send them off to be on their own as adults.
That's awesome.
How to wash laundry, how long to microwave something for.
All those things.
That's great. That sounds very fun. So what advice would you give to freshmen and maybe sophomores? What are some things they should be doing now so that they're ready for that application?
I would say find the things in your school and in your community that make you excited about coming to school or being a part of your community. When you can find something that you like and that you're passionate about, it really shows in those essays your senior year. Taking advanced classes for sure, but not overwhelming yourself, and finding that right balance between challenge and fun and joy.
I think it's all about finding out who you are as a student, as a person, what you can't do by doing the same things all the time, right? So I tell my kids, be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Put yourself in situations that are not the norm for you. Do something that's challenging for yourself to your limits, and then that's how you grow, because you're not going to grow by doing the same thing. So for some kids, it's taking advanced placement classes. For some, it's getting a job and balancing sports and doing all those things. But getting involved, however, and building that resume from day one in freshman year is really important. It's how they grow.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and talking to us about this. Maybe we can do a future show on some scholarship opportunities. I'm really excited to hear about how your seniors' processes are going. Thank you for tuning in today, and join us for the next AVID Achievers.